Martin Luther King said, "Hatred paralyzes life, love releases it. Hatred confuses life, love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life, and love illuminates it." Martin Luther King was just a man, and yet he made such a difference with his words, his actions, going through his long, dark night of the soul. And during seminary, I lived in Atlanta and before that, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade in Atlanta was a big pilgrimage for our UU congregation. I attended the UU Metro Atlanta North congregation. We called ourselves Lovingly Human. And that's where I cut my teeth on learning to be a minister, learning how to speak. The first time I got up in front of people, I was shaking and holding the pulpit, and I cried, and that congregation really lovingly held me. And what I really appreciate is also that tradition of going to that parade each year. And some people say, okay, you're going to a parade, you're showing up, you're singing songs, big deal, But the first thing that I would say about love, the first thing about changing your heart and changing the hearts of others is showing up. It's simply showing up, being a presence, saying, I am here with you. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make the whole world a better place, but I'm showing up here as an ally, as someone in solidarity. And so we had this hand-lettered sign. We have little banners that we've had here for things too. This one was really long, and the kids would fight over who would get to carry it. And when my children were in a carrier, when they were 2 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, each year we would go, and they'd be like, "Oh, we're going to ride the train." We'd ride the MARTA down. And we had a number of biracial families at Human, and they would all come because for them it was existential. They needed their children to know that they were part of this tradition, that they were honoring civil rights. And so each year we would go down, and for us in Atlanta, it was cold in January. I didn't know what cold was till I moved up here, but we'd be shivering in our 20 degree, 30 degree weather, and have our scarves, and we would sing, "We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives." And some of you know that song, some of you don't. It's in our great gray hymnal. And we would sing, "We shall overcome." We would sing, "Love will guide us." And then the kids would, of course, just make up songs as they were marching and the shouting. And it was just really an exciting time for them. And so I think about those seeds that we plant. When we say, each person has inherent worth and dignity, and we say each Sunday, our children have worth, and we go downstairs and think about, what matters. And the songs that we sing, our children have their own thoughts. Your children are not your children, they have their own thoughts. And of course they are your children, but we can't make them into us. We learn from them. And what a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then the song about peace, that is one of the great legacies of Martin Luther King. He was one man trying to make a difference, raising a family, feeling his call to love as a minister. He saw the unjust treatment of workers, people of color, and a need for change. And during less than 13 years under his leadership, the modern civil rights movement from 1955 to 1968, African Americans achieved more genuine progress and racial equality in America than the previous 350 years. And he became an advocate when people were saying, justice at any cost, might makes right. He said, no. He said, We need to do this with nonviolence. He was introduced to the concept of nonviolence when he read Henry David Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience. And Henry David Thoreau was an early Unitarian Transcendentalist. And then Martin Luther King, having grown up in Atlanta, he witnessed segregation and racism every day. And he was fascinated about the idea of refusing to cooperate with an evil system. So in 1950, as a student in seminary, he heard a man talking at Howard University, and he had gone recently to India, and he talked about Mahatma Gandhi. And King later wrote that Gandhi was the first person in his mind that transformed the concept of Christian love into a powerful force for change. And his stress on love instead of violence was the social reform that he was seeking. And so hopefully in all of our lives, we're going to hear things and we're going to feel things, and there's going to be something that just gets in there, you know? I know some people who are really passionate for healthcare, some people who are really passionate for helping those who are unhoused, you know, or there are so many ways in which we can make a difference in the world. And maybe some ways are better than others. I am terrified by sewing, which sounds hilarious, but I'm not gonna sew any neck gaiters. But I will gladly go pick up some at Target and put them in the car. And that's okay. You know, I can sit there and go, oh man, I'm just not participating. I'm not doing my part. But we all have a way to show our love in the world. And sometimes that is showing up at a march and singing songs and creating hope. Because if we look at all that's wrong in the world, man, we wouldn't get out of bed. Things wouldn't change. And when you think about the risk that happened with Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, he took so many risks, and ultimately he paid a price. You know, he paid a price for being out in the world. And, you know, hopefully we don't experience violence when we speak up, but it is risky. It is risky to say, you know, Black Lives Matter. It's risky to say, I believe in reproductive freedom for women. It's risky to say that we love all people, regardless of gender, race, class, you know, all these things. And yet, what if we don't? What if we don't? Or what if somebody doesn't? And so when I think about going each year and walking with solidarity, and as I went into seminary, there were more voices and more voices. You know, what is our MLK March? You know, what is that for us? I'm so excited that we're going to be hosting the first Homeless Connect event on Thursday. This is a big deal. You know, we always talk about wanting to offer services for people who are unhoused. Well, there are going to be over 16 agencies in our building. We're going to have haircuts, we're going to have therapy dogs and food to go, and people are going to get help, hopefully, with lots of questions that they have. And it takes a lot of help to do that. So thank you if you volunteered, and if you're interested, feel free to see me. And this congregation is where the community table started. You know, and this congregation is where so many cool things happen, but we, you know, if it gets bigger than us, it goes out in the world, you know, and we try and find our new thing. And so love is not just about action, though. It's also about how it affects us. You know, I think about the UU children and watching them grow when they have the right to think about what they believe in, when they have the right to say who they love or what gender expression they want to have. And to have that in a holy space, in a sacred space, whatever our belief, is radical. And I think we get used to it, but it's radical. And we had a new member class yesterday, and I'm always reminded of that, you know, there are many spaces on a Sunday morning where you can't speak your truth and where you can't love who you love. And sometimes where it hurts to love yourself because you're told you're a sinner or you're told you're going to go to hell. Well, I say no. I say you're not going to hell because there's enough hell going around everywhere else that we just need to love the hell out of everything. And that, woo! Thank you. And that's a universalist message. You know, our universalist roots said that a God would be too loving to send somebody to hell. And so that's such a cool way to connect. And one last story about Dr. Martin Luther King. In Atlanta, I was a part of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta, which was a pretty big congregation. They had about 1,000 people. And in the 60s, their youth group met with the Ebenezer Baptist Church youth group. And it was one of the few integrated youth groups. And one time they were meeting at that congregation, and there was a bomb threat. And it gets me every time when I think about this, that the parents, they stood around the building with their hands held, and they weren't gonna bow. And they watched cars go by, you know, like you can think about the 50s, 60s kind of, I'm gonna get you cars, you know, and they didn't bow. They protected the kids, and they met. And so, you know, when we think about courage, there's so many times when we're faced with, you know, what is the courage that I'm going to have in this life? And it can be a small thing. We can be at the grocery store and see somebody needs help with some groceries. We can see that, you know, somebody's having a hard time, and we say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" So when we think about what love calls us to do, feminist author Bell Hooks, an African-American writer, said, "Love is an action, never simply a feeling." So I hope this week, as you think about Martin Luther King Jr. and think about those opportunities in your life, to show up and to be love. Thank you.